So this is a list of all of the folks who are um, who were selected for the task force, and there were other really passionate and interested and talented people who were as well. And we really paid attention and thought a great deal about just making sure that um, this group was very much grounded in um, diverse perspectives, both geographically, culturally, ethnically, age-wise, gender-wise, right? And also, you know, as you saw in the application, that commitment to equity. So we know that there are a lot of people across Albuquerque and throughout New Mexico who are passionate about climate action. And so we're really just delighted that you're all here. My name is Lily Irvin Vitella, and I am the president and executive director of New Mexico First, and was born and raised and educated in Albuquerque. So it's really good to be with other folks who are from my hometown, though I'm joining you today from Peralta, New Mexico. And so for the most part, my internet connection usually hangs in there with me. If for some reason, because goodness knows it's always when I'm like most excited to be in a meeting that, you know, the universe conspires and it gets a little wonky. So if for some reason I kick out, I promise you I will be joining right back in. But that's the joy of living in a rural community. So that and having enough land to have like goats and chickens and whatnot. So, you know, trade-offs. So anyway, it's good to see you all today. And really, we want to kick it over to Ryan next, who is the director of the Environmental Health Department for the city of Albuquerque, to give you the official welcome. But it's so good to see you all. Ryan, we're going to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks. Let's see. All right, great. Thanks. Can you all hear me? All right, excellent. Well, thanks, Lily, for queuing it up, and just welcome everybody this afternoon on behalf of the mayor and the city administration. I just want to express our gratitude for your willingness to be part of this great initiative, something that we've been planning for a while, but just really excited now to actually be kicking it off. I just wanted to, you know, sort of introduce myself a little bit and some of our intent behind some of the activities that we're trying to do here, just to kind of set the stage a little bit. So I'm actually relatively new to both the department and to the state of New Mexico. I moved out here in January, and I moved here from Louisiana, where I did similar work on resiliency and sustainability for over a decade. And in my background there really sort of, I think, provides a lot of great context for the value and importance of the work that we do. And of course, I was part of some really great initiatives there, launching their climate action plan, leading their resilience strategy, even updating their mitigation policy and strategy over the years. But, you know, moving out here to New Mexico, the work that's here is just as important. And in fact, around sustainability, perhaps even more important. And so just really happy to be able to lead such a great team that's working on this, as well as work with a community that's really not only excited, but invigorated to see the change that we need around climate action for the community that we live in, and to keep us on a path for a brighter future for all of our next generations to come. I will say that as I look at the work and the approach that we're taking with this particular update to the climate action plan, there's really sort of three key things that I like to kind of point out as not necessarily different from what other cities, but certainly very significant for the efforts that we're doing here. And I think Lily already alluded to one of them, and that's the focus on equity. The idea that we're not, as a city, trying to update this plan for the community, but rather we're trying to do it with the community. And we're doing that very strategically. And it's not seen as a take from the community of your ideas, but rather, what can we give you? What can we work alongside you? And we've taken that approach both in how we're getting feedback. So, you know, when we were going out and getting people to complete the surveys, one of the strategies that we wanted to do was we're doing home audits along the way. We were telling people who were experiencing high energy burdens, no, let us go in and help you save some money right now and show you the value and why what we're doing is important. And then after the fact, let's ask you what that experience was like and what we can do more to continue to help you as you're part of this, you know, this sustainable future for our community. And so the other part of that is just what we're going to be going through over the next several months, that we really want to lean in and have the community voice be the one leading how we're going to get to that pathway. I mean, there's a lot of science behind the work that we're doing. There's obviously some very specific goals that we're going to be trying to reach in regards to our greenhouse gas emission reductions. But there's a lot of work in between those things, or amongst that things that can help us get there, to make sure that this work is most meaningful for the folks who are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate action in the first place. And so that's really why we're so thrilled to have such a diverse set of voices here to work with us over the next several months. And also why it's so important that as we bring sort of some of these resources together, that you guys are the ones that are leading how we're going to get there, because this is what we really need to be working on as a city, if we really want to show that the work here is not an affluent type issue, that climate action is actually something that affects all of us. And in fact, the folks who are most vulnerable in our communities are the ones who will be most impacted by not taking action in the future. And I would say the other two things, so one of them is the idea that you know, as a department, we very much view the climate emergency as a public health issue. And we know this from both the issues that come out of extreme weather conditions, that, you know, this can also lead to additional or new vector-borne diseases, extended periods of either high or extreme low temperatures, as well as drought conditions, and other health-related issues, you know, including like air quality that we've seen this year, because we've had extended wildfire seasons that are allowing, you know, more smoke to then drift into our air. So these are very much public health related issues, and so we view this as a department, and it's one of the things that we want to continually look at as we go forward on some of the actions that we're taking, even outside of the climate action plan. The last thing that I would say is that what's very significant from a city perspective is that the city is really committed to making, not only putting together this plan, but actually implementing all the actions that are in it. I mean, we've already shown and demonstrated the power of the work, the sustainability work as a city administration, and the progress that we've made towards our 100% renewables goals, and our progress towards creating a more friendly environment with city fleet for EV vehicles, et cetera, and some of the other planning initiatives. But we really are putting our resources behind this initiative, and any of the actions that are brought forward as recommendations in this climate action plan, we're going to take very seriously, and we're going to try every single day to try and make sure that we're putting the resources behind this as much as we can from a city perspective to this. So it's a very strong commitment to not only having the outcome be the climate action plan, but being the climate action plan being the start of the outcome, and that from there we actually have a very strong and robust roadmap on where we're going to get to reaching those goals. And so we're just really happy, again, that you all are here to help shape that path and help us understand what that road's going to look like. And so I will cede my time, but again, just thank you so much for your interest, and really looking forward to working with you over the coming months.
Ryan, thank you so much for that welcome and your leadership, and bringing your expertise to New Mexico, but also being really open to the expertise that really exists within our community already. I want to take a moment to turn to Laura. Laura is the Sustainability and Resilience Officer with EMNERD, or the Energy Conservation and Minerals Division. And I wonder, or department, I wonder, Laura, if you want to just introduce yourself to folks and give them a little bit of a sense of what's going on. How does this work connect to New Mexico as a whole?
Absolutely. Thank you, Lily, and thanks, Ryan, for the introduction and invitation to be here. As Lily mentioned, I'm the Sustainability and Resilience Officer at EMNERD, Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department at the state. And my role is primarily coordinating the state climate change task force. So in January of 2019, Governor Lujan Grisham issued her third executive order of her administration on climate change and waste prevention. And that executive order created the task force that I work with day to day. It also set statewide emissions reductions targets. So we now have a target as a state of reducing our emissions by 45% relative to 2005 levels by 2030, which is a really ambitious goal. And so we certainly appreciate the city of Albuquerque and other communities stepping up with their own goals and action plans to help us all move forward. Just a little bit about what the state is doing through the task force and otherwise. In addition to those emissions targets, the executive order on climate also established some specific policy directives, and a lot of those have been implemented already, such as passing the Energy Transition Act, which set our 100% zero carbon energy standard for the state, and updating our building codes, which happened this fall. And there's a number of other things underway at the state level. A lot of that is documented in our 2019 climate report, which came out last November. I'm happy to share a link if people haven't seen that. But that report covers our strategy across all sectors of the economy for reducing emissions, but also adaptation and resilience. And part of the creation of the task force was directing every state agency to evaluate their operations and programs and figure out how to incorporate both reducing emissions and increasing our resilience to climate change. And I should have mentioned before, the task force is composed of a designate from every single state agency. So right now it's a state body, but we are hoping to increase our stakeholder engagement over the next few months. The other thing I wanted to mention is that at the state, we've created within that task force several climate action teams focused on particular areas of different types of climate action, so transportation or the electricity sector, natural and working lands, just to name a handful of them. And so those teams will definitely be becoming more visible over time as they try to seek input from across the state on how we can reach our goals together. And lastly, I just want to re-emphasize that to meet these ambitious targets as a state, we really need the involvement and ambition of every community, every business, every resident to get there. And so it's really great to see Albuquerque kicking off this initiative, and I'm excited to see what you all come up with and learn from you along the way.
Thank you, Laura, so much for being here and just reminding us how this is a part of a broader statewide effort and national effort and international effort. So it's always good to remember that we're stepping into the stream. We're not the stream in and of itself, right? Like it's bigger than all of us. So thank you very much. What I want to spend a little bit of time doing and then get to the introductions, which I know I'm really excited about, and I bet you are curious to hear more about who's part of the task force as well. But I wanted to just lay out a little bit of a reminder about our objectives, our roadmap, and some group agreements, just to make sure that we're all on the same page about how we work together in a good way. So again, my name is Lily Irvin Vitella. I'm the President and Executive Director of New Mexico First. We are a statewide organization that works on engaging civic voice in public policy and systems change. So we work on a whole range of issues, including natural resources, and a lot of issues that are at the intersection of multiple policy areas, ranging from economic development and natural resources to health and education and good governance. And so I have with me my colleagues Erica Robers and Javier Vallejo, who are also supporting this project. And so I wanted to let you know a little bit about that in terms of our roadmap. So push up your sleeves, we've got some work to do together, right? We're gonna be meeting regularly. So depending on timing, so we can go back up just as that reminder. Sometimes it'll be every other week, sometimes every week, but we were really trying to make sure we had plenty of time to cover all of the ground on these really comprehensive issues that will be informing our action plan, right? And so, and the idea here is that we will spend some time in every meeting learning together, teaching one another and sharing ideas and perspectives, because you all also come with tremendous expertise, and really considering, deliberating about what we're hearing and seeing if there are some trends, some directions that we can go in that we think are good for the city of Albuquerque. And so while we want to think about the city as a whole, each of you have been selected because you also work with particular communities in very place-based ways, and we want you to bring those perspectives as well. So not only does it work for the city as a whole, but does it work for your neighborhood? Does it work for the people that you work with and in some instances represent, right? So again, we're going to be meeting from now all the way through until March. And so our major meetings are going to be now through mid-January, at which point we're really going to hope we have a plan. We're going to do it. I have confidence in us that we can share back out with the city. We'll have 2 public meetings in February. Those dates still need to be set. But where we're able to not just have written public comment, but we're also able to hear from folks and have some dialogue about what people are seeing in the plan, where they feel like we're right on and moving in the right direction, where they maybe say, hey, have you thought of this? Or where there's perhaps critique. All of that feedback will come back. We'll document that well. We'll make sure you all have access to that. And then we'll be coming back together in early March to review public input and then get that information back to the city, back to the mayor, back to the city council to really be able to understand that plan so there's a way to move forward, because planning is a part of it, right? But it really also comes down to implementation. So thank you all for coming with, your thought leadership, your relationships in community, and your experiences. If we can scroll down a little bit, Javi, to the group agreements, we sent these out in advance. And, in order to do work in a good way with lots of different perspectives, even if we have some shared broad goals in mind, it's helpful just to think of some good ways to work together. And I'm going to ask you all, if your cameras are on, if you can either give me a virtual thumbs up or like a real life thumbs up if, as I share a group agreement, it seems like something that you can live with. If you're hearing it and you're like, I don't know where you're coming from or what you even mean by that, I'm not going to be offended, like name that, and let's just make sure that we can really move forward on the same page. Are you with me? Does that make awesome? So the first thing is that we really want to, in this task force, respect shared learning and teaching, right? There's not an expectation that everybody is an expert on everything, but we know that you come with a lot of expertise. And so don't be shy about that. And also, be generous about giving other people space as well to share their expertise. And so we are going to have guests as well as task force members, as well as community stakeholders who may be weighing in. And so we ask you to just hold space for diverse points of view, because let information sift in and then see what you make of it, because we don't have to decide on every issue during every meeting, right? We're building towards being able to make that decision. So is that something folks can live with, like really sharing learning and teaching? Yeah? Anybody have questions? Beautiful. So the next one is just respecting time. Oh my goodness. In our planning, it has been so clear that even if we were to, we could spend forever just working on a plan because there's so much information. But we also know that this isn't a seminar in sustainability or addressing climate change. This is a task force that is oriented towards guiding action, right? And so we're really trying to balance that time between learning and discussion and deliberation. And so we're going to just ask folks to work really hard to share the time. We'll always, whenever we have guests, we're not expecting you to just take it in and be like, well, whatever. That's interesting. We want you to have time to really engage with our guests. And so we'll have some Q&A time. We'll also, when we have our discussion time, we're really going to try to share that out. And I'm not going to have my finger right on the watch because, one, I'm just not that way, but two, because I know we all have different communication styles. But that being said, it's really important to share the time and make sure that everybody who wants to be heard is heard. And so, we'll give some parameters before each discussion section about how much time each person has. You always have the option to pass and have us come back to you if you want to think about it more, or skip it, or share your perspective. But if there are ever challenges with time, I'm gonna help you move on. And it's not to be rude or cut you off. It's just to make sure that we take care of the needs of the whole as well as needs of you as individual participants. So I'm asking right now, like sometimes I can be hardcore and directive as a facilitator, but it's not from a lack of respect or love. It's because of really trying to take care of the needs of the whole. So if you all can commit to me that if you get your if I offend you, let me know, because that's certainly not my intent, but also that, you know, give that kind of benefit of the doubt that I'm really wanting to just make sure everybody's all heard. Can you all live with that? Are you cool with that? All right. If it comes to the public comment section and somebody is joining in and they're not talking about climate, they decided to come on to talk about another issue they have with the committee, I will shut that down. And again, it's not that I don't appreciate public input, but I really want it to be on topic. So I'm not afraid to use the mute button, and I'm also not afraid to use the eject button. So if you see that go down, know that that's intentional, and we're not, again, trying to hate on anybody. We're just wanting to make sure we use our time well. We want to respect, so folks can live with that one? Yeah, cool. All right, so the next one is just about respecting each voice. You all are going to come with different perspectives, and you know, we invite you to give each other the benefit of the doubt too, that even though you may experience climate action differently and see the solutions differently, that there's nobody who's coming here without an intent to serve the community, right? And so if we can remember that we're all coming with that positive intention, and if we have questions about one another's agendas, that we approach that respectfully, that will allow us to respect each person's voice. Another thing is, man, it's so hard being on tons of Zoom meetings. And so we're going to ask you to just try really hard not to multitask. Yeah. So if you can, and so when somebody's speaking, to just give them the floor and not be checking emails or texts, but really try to focus in, and also not use the chat as a side conversation. Can you all live with that? Thumbs up if you can. Beautiful, thank you for that. We're gonna also ask you to respect consensus. So for the task force duration, we're gonna be working towards consensus and common ground, but of course there's gonna be dissent, and we're gonna honor that. And the consultants and the city, we're gonna limit our conversation about the task force to process, and let the content emerge on its own and come to fruition in January when we finalize the report. So that way you don't have to worry about like back channeling or trying to prescribe. And we ask you all to do the same. Do you feel like you can work towards consensus and still leave some room for dissent, but like not play it out in the press until we've had a chance to talk about it together? Yeah. All right. And then the final thing is just to respect engagement and transparency. During this orientation meeting, it's not substantive in the way that we're making a decision or weighing in on a particular issue. It's mostly process, but for all of the rest of our task force meetings, they are open to the public. There will be opportunity for public comment. We'll be recording and keeping minutes. And I just wanted to make sure that folks understood that that level of transparency and respect for engagement is in play. So, and then there are a couple of different ways we have them in that people can comment. They can either go to CABQ climate comments at nmfirst.org if they don't feel like speaking up in a meeting or can't make a meeting. But people will also have the opportunity at the end of our future meetings to weigh in on public comment. So any questions about the group agreements? Are we good? Beautiful, beautiful. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Kelsey. She's next on the agenda. Javi, if we can scroll back down to that. And just talking more about the scope of the task force and related efforts, right? So that idea, again, that this work is taking place within a context, within a stream of work. And so it's helpful to know how our streams relate. So Kelsey, we're going to turn it over to you and make you co-host so we can share your presentation.
Thank you so much, Lily. And bear with me, guys, as I do a quick switcheroo on the screen share. All right, can everyone see my screen at this point, see the presentation?
Yep, yep.
Awesome. So thank you guys again so much for being here. You know, it's almost like semi-emotional for me, just because to give you a little bit of context, about this time last year, the sustainability resolution declaring a climate emergency just got passed, and the commitment to update the climate action plan had just come through with that resolution. And subsequently, right after that, I got to go to an incredible conference with sustainability professionals from across the country that work in cities. And I got to go and really hear about this wonderful planning processes that were happening in places like Providence, in Seattle, in Portland, and other cities across the country that had recognized, you know, years ago that equity needs to be in the forefront of all of our planning processes, that shifting power to frontline communities was of paramount importance in order to really put us on a path for true equity within our communities. And so, you know, with that, I just knew that Albuquerque needed this process here, that we really needed to shift how we were doing and thinking about climate policy, how we were thinking about doing our projects, and really acknowledge that frontline communities truly are experiencing the brunt of climate action, climate challenges, and will continue to do so. And so we really need you to be at the forefront of our planning processes, to make sure that the knowledge, that the experiences that you are having are driving what we do and driving what we do at the city. And so, you know, with that, I acknowledge that this process is probably not going to be perfect at some points, but I truly believe, and I think that a lot of people here experience this as well, that there's always going to be a foundation shift, another step in the chain that we're going through in this work. So the generations that have come before us, I mean, from my position, I really see the work of others has led us to the place that we're in at now. And I firmly believe that what we're doing right now is going to lead us into the future and build the foundation for those who are going to come after us and continue to do this work. This is the work of generations. So anyway, I'm just so pleased that, you know, at this point, again, you know, we've done one cycle around the sun and here we are, and I'm just so happy to begin this process with you all. So thank you so much for giving your time and your energy and your knowledge to all of this. So again, my name is Kelsey Rader. I'm sustainability officer for the city of Albuquerque. I've been living in Albuquerque and living in New Mexico for just about 7 years, and moved here from Arizona, fell in love, and frankly, never really want to go back. I think a lot of people have felt the same way. And one of the other things that I really had the great opportunity to do here was to start the sustainability office. So prior to January 2019, there was not a sustainability office at the city. It was a brand new office. It was put into formation really because the city received a really wonderful grant from Bloomberg Philanthropies. We were chosen as an American Climate Cities winner of the Climate Challenge. And so us, among 25 other cities across the country, are doing really, really intensive work right now in trying to actively mitigate climate change and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions as fast as we can. So, you know, outside of that grant work, we started recognizing that there's a lot of value to having a sustainability office beyond just what was going on in the grant. We recognize that there's needs from the community, needs from internal city government, and needs as a major contributor of greenhouse gases as a city to actively work on a couple different fronts to combat climate change and increase sustainability. And so essentially the office has slowly morphed to something that is now really looking to be an arm that is proactive in advancing innovative projects and policies for environmental stewardship. I think a lot of us know environmental regulation is a key player in a lot of ways of trying to keep us from you know, impacting our environment in a way. And so, but we recognize that regulation is not enough. It needs to work in tandem with proactive policy solutions and innovative projects. You know, and again, like I mentioned, I work across city departments to help different folks that don't necessarily have the capacity to be able to take on sustainability projects, but find ways that we can incorporate sustainability in what we're doing across our many, many different departments. And then finally, especially with this project, really connecting with the public, working towards that public education, shifting community action to be driven by community, and then implementing that. That's really the last leg of Sustainability Office that we're so pleased to be doing in this particular task force and in this particular process. So even though we've been only around for just about 2 years, a little bit 2 years shy, we've done a ton of work, and a lot of people don't always necessarily see Albuquerque as an immediate sustainability leader or recognize a lot of the work that's going on. But we, in just the last 2 years, have done a ton of major actions. So We were named as a top 3 city in the country for most solar per capita. We just recently broke ground on a major solar project that's going to be located on Hickory Apache Nation. And that's going to be getting us on track for over 80% renewable energy use by the end of 2021 for the city government. Like Ryan mentioned, we've been working with low-income communities to make sure low-income homeowners get free energy audits and upgrades to cut their utility bills. We were just named LEED Silver certified this month. We've been increasing the number of charging stations across the city and updating our conservation codes. So, truly there's been quite a bulk of work that has been done to date. And I just really am so pleased that we have such a community that has driven this, because none of these accomplishments happen without political will. But of course, we know that there's still a long way to go in terms of being carbon neutral and to really getting our city to where we envision it to be. I bring up this slide to show some preliminary findings from our upcoming greenhouse gas inventory, and I'll be sharing some more information from that report with you all in the next couple of weeks. And so from what you can see on that first page, we have, produced a total of 5.8 million metric tons of CO2 from the city of Albuquerque in 2017. And so when we break that down per person, roughly each person in the city of Albuquerque is producing about 10 metric tons of CO2 each year. So where that's coming from is primarily our stationary sources. So that's going to be things like our buildings, so commercial buildings, residential buildings, energy generation to power all of those buildings. It's also going to be coming from our our transportation sources. So especially within this transportation area right here, our vehicles, especially our single passenger vehicles, they are huge major contributors to this sector. And then we've also got a pretty significant area that we're thinking about with waste. And I'm so excited to talk about waste next week. It's one of my favorite subjects within sustainability. But one way to think about it is really to remember that all of the food that we throw away, that we don't compost, it's all going into the landfill. And as that decomposes, it's creating methane. And so many of you guys already know that already, but when we think of waste, sometimes it always doesn't translate to greenhouse gases. And so this is, a great reminder that it really truly does have an impact on our overall emissions. Another thing that's a little bit sobering about some of the findings we found, we measured emissions from 2008 to 2017. And as you can see there, we're not seeing serious reductions. We'd like to think that naturally these things start to fall off over time as technology becomes more efficient. But I think what we're starting to see is that there really is a need to ensure that we're taking tough, stringent action to make sure that we're reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, that we're actively putting and staying up to date with the policies and the codes and all of the actions that we're doing within city government and actors across the sector to really make a difference and a huge dent in those greenhouse gas emissions. And it'll be really interesting as we go along the way. You'll see that some things are going to be heavy hitters in the way of reducing greenhouse gases as opposed to others. And that doesn't always mean that they're going to be the most important. So that's going to be, again, a push and pull that we'll have to discuss and tease out over this sector. So I know that I'm sort of preaching to the choir here, so I won't go too in depth on this, but I'd like to remind us all why we're doing this work again. Not only was there a resolution declaring a climate emergency, and our city council, our administration, and really some of our major political bodies in the state really are geared towards climate action. This is a community drive. This is really resonating as a huge community priority. Through doing climate action planning, we can also set community-wide goals. And I say that because as a city of Albuquerque, quote unquote, a city government, there's a lot of work that we can do within city government and we can get it done quickly, but it doesn't necessarily mean that our reach is spreading out beyond that. And so when we set community-wide goals, what we're doing is we're inviting all the different actors, industry, nonprofits, education, as well as city government to be able to take part collectively and invite them to collaborate to have a bigger impact on our greenhouse gas emissions. So, obviously too, not only are we trying to mitigate greenhouse gases and reduce our overall footprint, but we have to prepare for a changing climate. We are absolutely locked in for climate change impacts over the next century. We know that to many different degrees that we're going to experience a lot of changes in our community. We're already starting to see cities like Phoenix had something like over 200 days of triple digits in 2020. And we know that we're susceptible to heat, we're susceptible to drought, to a lot of the other items that Ryan mentioned at the top of his talking points. And then finally, again, we just want to, again, really shift overall how we're doing policy development. And I just want to say as well, you know, even though this is a process that's funded out of city government, we are committed listeners. So at any time during these presentations, we are here to provide context, we're here to answer questions, but ultimately the decision-making power relies with this task force to develop what the content of the actual climate action plan will be. And that is something that we take very, very seriously. So to give a little bit more context to and kind of how we got here, you know, I should say that this is not the city's first climate action plan. Climate action plan was developed in 2009, wishful thinking. And it was a very comprehensive plan. It's posted on the city's website. That's cabq.gov/sustainability. And I really encourage everyone to take a look if they have a chance. It is a very dense document, and you're gonna see as you look at it, it's definitely a snapshot in time for where we were in 2009. Especially as we go through some of the speakers and the content that we're gonna work with here, we're gonna see things that have made major shifts in how we're thinking about different ideas. So for example, renewable energy technology is much cheaper than it used to be in 2009. There's a completely different landscape when it comes to recycling at this point. So, you know, it was absolutely due for an update, just in the fact that we have just we're in a very different world. They also weren't going through a pandemic, obviously. And so thinking about with what we're trying to do in the 2021 plan, obviously not only are we in a pandemic and that limits how we interact with people, how we do business, but we're also thinking about how can we focus on sustainability in our economic recovery? How can we have economic recovery be something that accomplishes new infrastructure that doesn't add to greenhouse gas emissions, but helps to reduce from what we had. Finally, you'll see if you look at the 2009 plan, there was a ton of different sections. They were super, super comprehensive. And so when we were going and doing this planning initiative, one thing that was a big priority was to try and, you know, keep that comprehensive coverage, but make sure that we were also being as condensed as possible in some of the topics that we're covering. So we took everything that was done in the 2009 plan and really identified 5 sections of the plan that we think are going to be most important to cover to honor that work and make it a true update of the 2009 plan. So sustainable buildings being one, obviously, renewable energy, climate conscious neighborhoods being a little bit more of a catch-all subject area. And there's a lot of really top priorities that emerged out of the public survey that we gave before this meeting that New Mexico First will cover, that will be highlighted in there. Things like tree planting, green space access, local food and agriculture, community garden issues, and then recycling and waste and zero waste and clean transportation. So I know that there's a lot of folks that have also asked us, you know, what about specifically a section on food and agriculture? What about a water conservation plan? The reason that we don't have specific sections to those items is because there's been a ton of planning work that has been done in the time since 2009, both on the statewide and local level to cover those issues. And so trying to keep in the spirit of not duplicating efforts, but really adding to the conversation where we can. I really encourage everybody, if they have the chance and they are passionate about those issues, to take a look at the city's food and agriculture policy plan that was produced by Thornburg Foundation. And there's also a state level plan as well that New Mexico First produced back in, I believe, 2016, 2017. And then with water, we also have a state water plan, but then we also have a 100-year water plan that the Water Authority puts out. So again, you know, we're not going to limit the conversation in any sort of way on any particular topic. This is your task force, this is your time, this is your plan. But I really definitely want you to have the opportunity to see what these other planning entities have done so that we feel like, again, we're just continuing to add to the conversation. finally, just a little bit of logistics and kind of where we are in the overall process. I just wanted to highlight for you guys, before this task force convened, we did a significant amount of public outreach. And again, New Mexico First is going to cover that here pretty quickly, quickly after I'm done here. But we did have a climate survey where we asked people to identify priorities, how they were moving around the city, things like what they would like to see as improvements in their neighborhood. And we got over 3,000 responses to that. We also actively recruited you all to be the drivers of the public voice in this process. So now we're really in that second bucket you can see there. You're all assembled, we're super excited, and we're gonna be working towards getting that public input in February, so that hopefully by springtime, we'll have a final plan that's ready to share with the public, and by summer of next year, we're gonna already go into implementation. So that's just like an overall trajectory of where we're headed. So Lily, I'm not sure how I'm doing on time. Do I have a quick minute to take any questions from anyone real fast? Or do we need to move on?
We can take a couple of clarifying questions, but we can save the more discussion-oriented ones for our discussion section. Sound good? Does anybody have any clarifying questions? Kevin?
One question. What's the total GHG emissions?
That'll be about 5.8 million.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have a clarifying question?
All right, well, seeing none, oh, yeah, sorry, Sharon.
Thanks, Kelsey. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about the section in the timeline about how the plan will actually be written. Who will be doing the writing?
So the team at New Mexico First will be, sorry, Kelsey, I'm jumping in with you.
Go for it.
We'll be doing the writing, and we'll be doing it based on our notes from our conversations, based on your responses to homework. So we're really trying to give multiple opportunities for deliberation and weighing in. When we do the first draft, it will be based on themes that have emerged through our conversations and through the task force member responses to those kind of clarifying questions that happen as part of homework as well. That being said, it will be a draft. It will be a draft based on what we're hearing as consensus perspectives and lifting up some of the dissenting perspectives that require deeper deliberation. And so that will be available to you very end of December, the very beginning of January. We'll start to get drafts out to look at, right? But we'll still have 2 more substantive meetings in January, which will also help us refine, and we'll get into more of those issues that don't neatly fit into any of those 5 categories and are more those climate conscious neighborhood sorts of questions, right? So then there'll be a chance for you all to review. We'll do it like as a Google Doc so people can share and keep comments. We'll download versions so that way we don't, hopefully nobody deletes each, but we'll keep versions together. So everybody you can have as much of a hand in that as you'd like, but everybody will have the opportunity to review. Everybody will have the opportunity to comment. And if folks want to help with the drafting, not only based on your perspective, but based on those consensus perspectives, that's how we'll be doing the drafting. Once we've got a good, solid working draft, the city will be able to share that out publicly for both written comment and as well as for comment during conversations. And then there'll be the next draft where we really finalize and take into consideration broader community input. Did I miss anything, Kelsey?
That's good, sounds good. And
Okay.
I think that Virginia raised a hand.
Yes, Virginia.
Yes, Virginia.
Virginia.
Yeah, and this maybe will be something we're talking about later today or possibly in another session. And I'm glad to hear that you're all mentioning equity and that it's a driving force in the work that you're undergoing. But for me, as someone who's worked in the field of equity, and especially in anti-racist work, as a former professor and organizer, that's something that really means a lot to me. And I would like to hear more details about accountability to community beyond just stating that frontline communities are most impacted. I'm sure that all of us on this task force are very aware of those impacts to frontline communities. Many of us are from frontline communities, including myself. And so for me, I really want to be sure that equity is not something that we just state, that it's in our minds as we're following this process. But I would like to hear more details of what that means for you all as you've worked on this, and especially what it means for us moving forward beyond just centering or this need to center communities' voices, because for me, equity entails so much other work, and a big part of that is really centering the realities of environmental racism. And I want to make sure that that's centered in the conversation as well, because when you place environmental racism at the forefront of the conversation, it really shifts the way sustainability is defined and addressed.
Thank you so much for that, Virginia. So I'll give you a couple quick examples of how we're centering equity in the process and how we're committing to this beyond. So as Ryan mentioned, from the very get-go, we wanted to make sure that we're doing immediate work. So backing up a little bit, the city was able to get some funding to put together an environmental equity map. It's still in some draft phases right now, but if you'd like to see it, we can share it. Essentially, it shows hotspots in the city where people are experiencing high energy burdens. They're paying more on their utility bills than they should be. It shows where people are not having adequate access to transportation. And it's also showing areas in the city where people are experiencing high eviction rates. And so from that, and that map is having additional characteristics added onto it, which is why it's currently in draft form. So when we took that map, we were able to identify a lot of key neighborhoods that are experiencing high energy burdens. And so from there, we not only made sure that those folks were prioritized as those 300 homes to receive free energy audits and upgrades, but we also made sure we sent them specific invitations to take the Climate Action Task Force survey so that we could ensure that we were having a pool of folks who were experiencing the highest levels of burdens, help to inform what the survey outcomes were going to be. We also made sure as we were going through, the survey was open, that we were reaching out to communities and community organizations that were specifically plugged into and representing and supporting frontline communities. And I'm happy to provide a list of what those organizations were and who we reached out to if that's something you're interested in. The other portion of the commitment of equity is specifically prioritizing frontline communities as being those members frontline communities as being the communities of the city where we wanted task force members. So that commitment is really shown in this task force as well, where we said, as you all applied, specifically, we were looking for people that could really represent and speak to the issues that frontline communities are committed to. Going forward, in everything that we're doing, we're trying to incorporate equity. So we're currently phasing out a lot of the projects that we've done a lot of work on over the last 2 years, and specifically looking at what can we do for renter energy efficiency, what can we do for low income access to EV and low emissions transportation, what can we do in all of these different sectors that we have to do sustainability work to prioritize frontline communities. And so as those things develop, we're going to continue to share them with you all. And we really rely on you guys to set the agenda, to make sure that you're giving us the work, you're putting us in the position over the next couple of years to ensure that whatever we're doing, we're making sure that we're lifting up our frontline communities so that we can, as one Albuquerque, really experience the overall benefits.
Thanks, Kelsey. Elga, you've had your real hand up, and Karen, you have your virtual hand up. So we're going to go to Elga next, and then we'll go to Karen. And then we're going to move on the agenda, knowing that this is just the beginning, right?
Okay, thank you, Lily. I'm going to be as brief as I can. Still riding the wave of equity. And here listed on what you've presented, recycling, green spaces, transportation. But I think a very important piece here, because it's been our historical biased struggle with frontline communities. I think within those, there has to be a space for where we talk about economic development. Because that is if we're doing all of this and then we have no framework for businesses that want to come into Albuquerque, not explaining they're taking our water resources, that it's unhealthy development. So here in the South Valley, our historical bias has been numerous Superfund sites that community has had to clean up. Community has had to find the resources to do, and community has had victories in doing it. Here, we're in a brownfield site. So I think we can't really talk about equity and really putting this task force together if we can't list also, being part of the framework, what has been poisoning our communities in history. It's unhealthy economic development. So I think that has to be a part of this framework here, where we have green space, recycling, transportation, because if we don't put a framework on that, we can do all of this and yet still accept unhealthy economic development affecting our frontline communities. And I'm talking about the history we have here.
Thank you.
It's fact, it's science, it's all of that. So I think that as we talk about equity, we have to also look at the historical bias when we bring that framework of equity in, because we have a lot of past homework and past history that still hasn't been acknowledged to this day. So thank you.
Thank you, Elga. Karen.
Okay, my question, thank you, is really basic. I just had missed in the presentation, Kelsey, you had mentioned there's some current plans that we can reference, and I missed what those were exactly. I'd heard something about water, but then I also want to make sure where we can access that, just so if we want to read up on those.
So Lily, does it make most sense if I just send you links for some of those things that I referenced in my talking points, and we can share it out with the group afterwards?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
and Karen, there are a few ways that folks will always be able to access information. So if there's ever a report that's referenced in conversation, we will include the link to that report in the follow-up minutes from
Oh, okay.
The second thing that we'll do, if you're like, dang, where's that email, is that the city of Albuquerque has, the sustainability website that also has the task force on it. New Mexico First is also keeping one too. So not because we're wanting to duplicate efforts, but because we want you all and the community to have every confidence that all of the information that is discussed is available, right? And so we're really tag teaming efforts there to make sure that there's no wrong door to get access to the information you need to know what you need to know. So thank you for that. And Javier, if you don't mind sharing, again, the City of Albuquerque a website and also the New Mexico First website, as well as the public comments email, but it's also in the agenda. So we're gonna cruise, but I wanted to step back for a second because I thought that context was really important. So I shifted the agenda a little bit, but I really want you all to get a chance to introduce yourselves. No, we're gonna be having a deeper conversation after we listen to the community responses to the survey, where we were trying to say like, hey, how are you situating these issues out in community? So you'll get an opportunity to talk more about the values that bring you here. But in our brief round of introductions that we're gonna do alphabetical style, just to make sure we don't miss anybody, is if you could just say, your name, what part of the city you are representing, and if you represent any other organization in your space here on the task force, if you could just name that as well. So we'll just do kind of that short, sweet, letting other folks understand that network of relationships and expertise that exists. But we'll save the values conversation for our discussion. So Genesis, you're at the top of the list. Do you mind unmuting and introducing yourself?
Hi all, my name is Genesis Arizmendi. I am an instructor and postdoctoral fellow at the University of New Mexico. I am also affiliated with the Climate Reality Project and have been doing several presentations related to climate change and how it impacts health specifically. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you so much for being a part of this and committing your time. Let's go to Kevin B next. Kevin?
Hi, I'm Kevin Bean. I live in Carnwell and G. Harris Canyon. I'm a member of the Sierra Club Central New Mexico Group Climate Action Team, and I'm active with the Creation Care Committee at my church, St. John the 23rd Catholic Community here in Albuquerque.
Thank you, Kevin. We're going to go to Daniel next. Daniel, welcome. Daniel, if you're speaking, you have not unmuted, my friend.
I'm showing myself unmuted.
We can hear you now. Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel Beeman. I'm with Bernalillo County. I work in the Economic Development Department, and I've been in the Economic Development Department since the end of 2012. Prior to that, I was with Planning and Zoning here at Bernalillo County since 2002. And my title is Special Projects Coordinator. Don't let that mislead you. It's just kind of we have a small office at the county in economic development of up to 6 people when we're fully staffed, and really that's all about all, just as far as introductory purposes that I have.
Thanks, Daniel. Welcome,
Thanks.
welcome. We're going to go to Molly next.
Hi, I'm Molly Blumhofer. I live in Nob Hill, and I work for Central New Mexico Community College in facilities as a sustainability project manager. I'm also an adjunct natural sciences teacher there as well. And I sit on the city's Vision Zero task force, as well as Mr. Cog's active transportation committee.
Thanks, Molly. Let's go to Marcus next. Hi, Marcus.
Hi, I'm Marcus Burnett. I live here up in the North Valley. I'm currently the Chief of Command and Control Operations on Kirtland Air Force Base. I run all the operations on base for the installation commander, Colonel Miller. And hopefully with any luck, here soon, I'll be the new Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for the mayor.
Lily, you're muted.
Oops, how hilarious, right? So Teresa Cardenas next. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm Teresa, and I am a native New Mexican, and I represent the far Northeast Heights. Let's see, I wear a number of different hats over my career, but I am now the chair of the Middle Rio Grande Water Advocates. I am also a former representative of the Union of Concerned Scientists, and I worked on renewable energy policy for the state, as an example of some of the work that I've done. I also have my master's in sustainability from Arizona State University. And I'm very happy to be on this task force because it falls into my wheelhouse.
Thanks, Teresa. We're really happy to have you. Let's go to Amy next. Amy.
Okie doke. There, sorry. I'm Amy Carpenter, and I'm in the Southeast area. I live right next to CNM. I am a retired public school teacher. I have my master's in curriculum and instruction in multicultural education. I've taught from middle school through young adults, both out in Moriarty and then in Thailand and then in Las Cruces for many years, and then in Morocco in the Peace Corps recently. And so I have a really broad view of what high poverty and systemic racism, embedded racism and embedded discrimination looks like those were my kids, those were my peeps. So I'm totally invested. I also, just one more minute, is I helped start the recycling program at the middle schools in Las Cruces. So that to me is my heartbeat. You know, it's been embedded in every single thing I've ever taught for 25 plus years.
Thank you, Amy. Let's go to Josue next. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Josue. Let's see. I grew up here in New Mexico. I'm a former undocumented immigrant. Most of my social justice work has been in immigration work. I'm one of the co-founders of the New Mexico Dream Team, a undocumented youth-led organization statewide that works for immigration justice. I'm an associate fellow for the Institute for Policy Studies in their climate justice program, and where I do research and I write about climate justice and intersectionalities with everything from racial justice to immigration justice. I'm also a communications associate for the Center for Civic Policy, where I create content and help out in climate policy and climate justice messaging for Power for New Mexico.
Thanks, Josue. Welcome, welcome. We're going to go to Elga next. Hi again, Elga.
Hello, everyone. I am Elga Garza, Executive Director of Agricultura Cooperative Network, based out of the South Valley of Albuquerque and into unincorporated parts of Bernalillo County. Our network is a farming cooperative. We all are sustainable small-scale farmers using regenerative growing methods. Throughout these 10 years, we have been working on developing a sustainable local and regional food system. We aggregate as small-scale organic farmers out of the South Valley Economic Development Center, and throughout the years have connected the dots, worked collaboratively to change procurement policy within governmental and institutional corporation buy-in to invest in the local agriculture. And so after many years of work, we are building that sustainable food system within our state and supply to public education department at the statewide level. We also service New Mexico UNMH Hospital, Presbyterian Food Pharmacy. We have our own 320 family member, weekly member CSA. So we've been connecting all the dots, working for local investment to really build a sustainable food system that builds community health and community wealth. We've worked with many of you that are here representing this task force, and many of you I don't know, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to share our work with all of you and learn jointly about these crises. As farmers, we've been hollering for the past 20 years of what we see in the field, what we see climate change doing to our seeds, and actually what is happening within our water resources and our soil health. So yes, I take this very seriously and look forward to the task that we have at hand to bring our climate narrative forward and keep us moving forward. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Elga. And Elga's also very modest. She's also a powerhouse in statewide work in this space. So we're delighted to have you as part of the task force. Solana, thank you for being so patient. Welcome. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Solana Granados. I live really close to UNM, south of UNM, and I'm currently an undergrad student in political science in community and regional planning. And I currently work at Laguna Behavioral Health as a victims advocate. And I'm really excited to learning and help contributing with you all. Thank you.
Well, welcome and thank you. Let's go to Sharon next. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, thank you. I'm Sharon Hausum. I live in the near North Valley on the Griegos Acequia, and I am a community planner for the Pueblo of Laguna. Currently, much of my work is in climate and renewable energy. Also, I've done work in transportation, housing, and water planning. I am also part-time faculty at UNM in the Community and Regional Planning Program, and I am the co-coordinator of the New Mexico Tribal Planners Roundtable. Glad to be part of the task force.
Thank you, Sharon. Richer networks here, right? Let's go to, yeah, thank you, Sharon. Let's go to Karen next. Karen?
Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here. I'm very excited about this opportunity. I currently am the vice president for the New Mexico Autism Society. I also have served, and I forgot to mention, I live in the Parkland Hills area. For many of you, I don't know how you're familiar, it's very close to Nob Hill in the university area. I work a lot in my community. I do a lot of volunteer work within the Parkland Hills Neighborhood Association. And I currently work at UNMH for the Department of Pathology, where my background is in administrative coordinator type work. But this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart on a personal level, and organizationally wise. Whenever I have an opportunity to help us make green choices and find out how to be resourceful, I take that opportunity head on. So thank you all for this opportunity, and I'm really excited to work with everyone.
Thank you, Karen. Let's go to Cassandra next. Cassandra, welcome.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. My internet is a little unstable right now, so I'm not going to turn on my video, but I am representing the Silver Hills neighborhood near the university. I'm a native New Mexican. I grew up in Las Vegas, New Mexico, born and raised, and I am currently a PhD student at UNM studying biology, where I look at plant and microbe interactions to create to figure out what microbial communities promote drought resiliency here in New Mexico. I do most of my work down at Sabieta in southern New Mexico, the wildlife refuge. And my background leading up to this, I'm really interested in climate change. In Las Vegas, I worked on local issues with environmental justice and equity. And my background is in in Albuquerque. I have worked on solar power resolutions through Environment New Mexico. And in California, I did a fellowship where I was working in Sacramento on the combination of water science and policy. And so I'm really interested in continuing that science and policy outreach. And I am so excited to be on this committee and learn with everyone. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Cassandra. Let's go to Alex, welcome.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Alex Montano here. I live in the Northeast Heights area of Albuquerque. I gotta say, I'm admiring the members that have come already before me. What an exceptional group of people from a variety of backgrounds. I currently serve as the Senior Vice President of Development at Year Out Energy. Dedicated my entire professional career to energy efficiency, renewable energy, resource conservation, mostly focused on large projects related to achieving those outcomes. I also serve as a member of the Albuquerque Energy Council and as the private co-chair of the New Mexico chapter of the Energy Services Coalition, and on the national organization now as the board of the Energy Services Coalition. So super into this stuff. Like I said, I've been doing it for about 20 years now, and it's very fulfilling work. And I can't wait to get to work with each of you as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Virginia, hello again. Would you like to take a moment to tell folks a little bit more about you?
Yes, thank you. So I'm Dr. Virginia Necochea, and I'm in Albuquerque with a very strong connection to the Valle de Atrisco, the South Valley, especially in terms of work I've done in the protection and preservation of urban and semi-urban acequias in our community. And much of my work, as I mentioned earlier, has been focused on really understanding inequitable structures in our society, especially as it relates to racism and other major issues that impact our lives. And I am the fairly new executive director of the New Mexico Environmental Law Center. And we are a public interest environmental justice law firm that works very closely with clients and communities across New Mexico in protecting the environment and especially in fighting for environmental justice. So I'm really happy to be part of this task force.
Thank you so much. Again, welcome. We're gonna shift to Emily. Emily, hello. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a student at UNM. I live by UNM, like more specifically next to Albuquerque High. I'm double majoring in biology and Spanish with my minor in chem. I'm the vice president of Fight for Our Lives. I'm the director of communications for the University of New Mexico Leaders for Environmental Actions and Foresight. And I'm also on the board for New Mexico Youth Empower, which is the New Mexico chapter of Women's March. So I'm very tightly, in the youth activism community, which is kind of the viewpoint that I hope to bring to the table. And I'm really honored and happy to be here and to meet everyone and to get started on this work.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here and your good work and being part of this good work as well. I'm gonna go to Chaz next. Hi, Chaz.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Chaz Robles. I'm in the South Valley, resident here in the South Valley. I work with an organization called Ancestral Lands. We work with Indigenous youth and young adults doing conservation, preservation work here in the city, in the county, and across the southwestern region. I've been in conservation and natural resource protection work since 2006. And climate change and global warming are, I think, some of the, if not the biggest, definitely high up on the list issues that we need to address for future generations. So happy to be a part of this collaborative to move the needle here in Albuquerque.
Well, welcome and thank you. I'm gonna go to Tara next. Tara.
Hi everyone, my name is Tara Trafton. I'm representing the Los Duranes neighborhood, which if you're not familiar, it's just north of Old Town. So I have a master's degree in sustainable energy systems from the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, Sweden, and Politecnico di Torino in Turin, Italy. I just completed that about a year and a half ago, and then I moved back to Albuquerque. I was born and raised here, and I now work as a project manager for Year Out Energy, and I am passionate about really looking into energy efficiency and just trying to make a difference in the community. I've lived in several different places, different states, and different countries, and I really want to put Albuquerque on the map and see what we can do. So I'm really looking forward to working with you all and learning from you all, and that's about it.
Beautiful. That's a lot. I love it. Like, very modest. That's it. Thank you, Tara. I appreciate it. Let's go to Erika next.
Which Erika?
Erika Velarde.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I was wondering. Hi there. I'm Erika Velarde, and I'm super honored to be working towards solutions for the city with all of you guys. You guys are just amazing. You make my little crunchy heart feel so happy to see so many amazing people working towards, making our world and especially our immediate area an amazing, wonderful place. So I'm representing the northwest part of Albuquerque. Want to say hi to Laura because thankfully she works for my old Energy Conservation and Management Division. That's where I was lucky enough to find my passion and find my love for this earth. And so I'm a mechanical engineer, born and raised in New Mexico, got my bachelor's degree at UNM. And just once I got into energy conservation and was exposed to all the beautiful things we can do in this world and change it and shift, make a whole paradigm shift, just really excited. So I currently work now for Train Technologies. I am the New Mexico representative. And before I worked with Train, I worked with Train to do a state project with the city, inside the city of Santa Fe, which is going to save the public and the state of New Mexico 50% of their current utility spend. So that's also all that energy that would have been just going in, out into our universe. So thank you guys for having me here. I'm really honored.
Thank you so much. So there is another Erica and Javier, and I mentioned them at the top of the call. They're part of the New Mexico First team. So you'll be seeing emails from us that they're part of supporting this project. I want to also acknowledge Alice, who is part of the team at CABQ. Alice, do you want to say a quick hello?
Sure, yeah, nothing too exciting here, but I work at the Environmental Health Department and I am assisting more in an administrative role in this whole process. I took my undergraduate degree was in environmental science and sustainability up in Canada. And yeah, I recently moved to New Mexico, so I'm really excited to be involved in this really exciting work and learning from you all. Thank you.
So if you all, we're going to practice using our reactions button, right? If you all heard from you can either like wave your hands, do like some jazz hands, or you can use the reactions button. But if you heard something as you were listening to the other people who are joining together on this task force that either resonated with you as some potential common ground or inspired you, can you just like give a reaction? Let us know if you heard some stuff that went on. So we were really blown away in the review process, and I want to thank the city for giving that clear criteria, but letting that criteria be tested through the lens of the work at New Mexico First. So really keeping that independent, really keeping those boundaries in a healthy way to make sure that it was truly community driven. So with that, I want to share with you all some of the feedback that we heard from folks around Albuquerque who completed the survey about climate action. And so we've got a little PowerPoint. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, but just hit some highlights. It will also be made available to you in the notes, just so you have an understanding of where other folks are coming from and who we heard from, right? So Javier, are you willing to share screens and pull that up for us? Beautiful.
Yeah.
And again, a shout out to the city for designing the survey and getting it out to lots of folks and being very intentional about outreach strategies. So it wasn't only the usual suspects. And also a shout out to Javier and to Erica for working really hard together on the report that this is pulled from, where we analyzed the data. So again, the survey was the brainchild of the Environmental Health Department, and the analysis of the survey results was done by us as an independent third-party organization. We can go ahead to the next slide.
Sorry, my computer's taking a little bit to load.
Okay. So again, this survey was shared with you, but it's also posted on the City of Albuquerque website and also on New Mexico First website about this initiative. So if you are interested in sharing it forward with others or taking a deeper dive, please do. One of the things that was so beautiful about our community is that when people were responding to the survey and they had the opportunity to share additional thoughts, they did. And I think hearing people's responses in their own words is really powerful. And so we lifted up direct quotes from people in terms of the variety of ways that they were looking at these issues. You can go ahead to the next slide. All right, So quick facts, who participated by race and ethnicity? So there were, as a whole, there were 3,112 people who responded to the survey. 63% were white or Caucasian, so there was overrepresentation in terms of comparison with the city as a whole. There were 17% of people who declined to answer questions about race and ethnicity. The folks who identified as Hispanic, Latinx, Chicana or Chicano, Mexicana or Mexicano were 13%. 3% of people identified as multiracial. 2% of folks identified as Native American or Indigenous. 1% of folks identified as Black or African American, and 1% of respondents identified as Asian. So rather than asking the questions in like the typical census way, it was really left open-ended for people to identify in ways that were meaningful to them. Let's take a look at the next slide. So we also looked at who participated by location. And for those of you who can't read the squint print, I promise you it's more legible in the report. But we looked at quadrant of the city. And so we looked at Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest, and then anybody who identified as other. And just to know more about like the actual numbers more than the percentages, 625 people were from the northeastern part of the city. 451 were from the northwestern part of the city, 610 were from the southeastern part of the city, and 363 were from the southwestern part of the city. There were 407 folks who said something else, and it was a whole variety of responses. And then 656 people did not say what part of the city they were from. And so some of that may be that people, didn't identify the specific neighborhood. If you get a chance to do the deeper dive into the report, you can see by neighborhood association. We also had just quite a number, I think it was 36 zip codes that were represented. So let's go ahead to the next slide, please. So we also asked, the questions were asked about age. And so 45 folks were under 18, and that's less than 1%. 15% of participants were between 18 and 35, 32 were between 36 and 55, 37%, the highest, was people who were 56 to 75, and we had a handful of our elders, 142 in fact, who were over 75. And then there are about 300 folks who didn't let us know how old they were. But what I think is interesting and exciting is we have a range of participation. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide, please. So it was really important to also understand income, right? Like, is this, sometimes climate issues can be framed in ways that don't connect to social, environmental or racial justice. And there's this sense that it's, bigger. And so 3% of the respondents had a household income of less than $10,000 a year. There was another 3% that had between $10,000 and $25,000 a year. So of low income. 12% reported an annual household income of between 25 and 40% or 40,000. And then another 10% reported a household income of 40 to 55,000. 12% reported that income of between 50 and 70. And then there were 39% of respondents who had an income of 70,000 a year or over. So we can go ahead and click to the next slide, please. So in addition to kind of finding out who was responding to the questions, there were some substantive questions that were asked as well. And so when people were asked to select the top 3 options for what could improve their neighborhood, the biggies that popped up were to have more trees and vegetation. That was the clear front runner. There was also an emphasis on having more solar, and then panels, and then also safer streets and paths, right? So they were close to one another. Those were the top 3, but everything else still had, people saying, yes, this matters in a significant number. Let's go ahead and take a peek at the next slide. So this was one of the questions where folks were invited to provide an open-ended response. And so we went back through and we coded like themes. And so what's interesting is that, when asked to say more, people still reinforce that idea of more public or green space. There was an emphasis on how we use our water resources, and so passive water capture and stormwater infrastructure was listed, and expansion of recycling programs. So those were the top 3 there. And what's interesting, and I think speaks to kind of the framing and the commitment here and who we are in this area, is that folks really showed their love for being outdoors, and talked about having more hiking trails and maintenance of trails. But people also really emphasized the importance of equity. So that value has come through loud and clear in the design and in the participation and the substance of responses. If we can take a look at the next slide, please. So when folks were asked which of the following actions they would be most likely to take in terms of maybe policy incentives, the majority of or not the majority, but a third of respondents said that if there was something that supported an appliance upgrade that was allowed for more energy efficiency, that they would want to take advantage of that. 25% of folks said that if there was some kind of incentive around electric vehicles, that they would have interest in that. And then there was a pretty even distribution in terms of home upgrades, solar energy for homes, and climate education in terms of being mitigation strategies that folks would participate in. So let's take a peek at the next slide, please. So, of course, there was a question around transportation and how folks get around the city. Not unlike most of the western part of the United States, a very high percentage, 96% of survey participants said cars were their primary form of transportation. However, people also were able to choose other strategies as well. 37% said that they walk a lot as well, and 27% marked biking as a key way to get around the city. This was another area where we asked people to kind of expand. So if we can take a look at the next slide. So these are some of the big themes that came up. One, that people use multiple forms of transportation. The folks who used electric vehicles had a lot to say about that. So there was quite a bit of a response there. Safety concerns and obstacles in terms of, bikes and cars, or biking and busing and walking were raised. And then we also heard, feedback about reliance on relationships and family, friends, and neighbors to get around carpooling, sunban. People took an opportunity to comment on their thoughts about art, both positive and negative, and accessibility issues came through loud and clear. And we lifted up one of those comments just because I thought it was, it's important, right, to understand how different people are experiencing the city. One person noted, I hobble with a ski pole sometimes, and a wheelchair through dangerous streets and badly designed curb cuts that are designed to actually throw the disabled into dangerous traffic. So that perception that not only is it not proactively safe, but maybe there's just this disregard. And so keeping those kind of equity concerns in mind as well. If we can shift to the next slide. So we asked folks how they would improve getting around the city. Sidewalk upgrades were really big, bike lane upgrades, and then busing. So, and then about not quite a third of folks responded. It was a little over a quarter actually, they had other ideas about how to improve getting around the city. So if we go to the next slide, the big themes that emerged were safer bike and pedestrian infrastructure, enforcement of speeding laws, roads and sidewalk maintenance. And then, you can see the percentage of themes that came up in other ways, but it's helpful, right, to understand where folks are coming from. Let's go to the next slide. We're getting towards the end. So we asked folks which of the following actions would increase or improve the time that they spent outside. 55% really focused on building parks and trails and recreational facilities closer to their homes, so having that more distributed throughout the city. 39% said that they would prioritize providing more or better information on the facilities and programs. And then 56% said that of those folks who responded to this question had a detailed narrative that supported improving parks, open space, biking and walking trails. So this was an area where people weighed in a lot. If we can go to the next slide. We asked folks about what would help them decide what to throw away and to recycle. And these were the top answers. 51% said that they would use recycling card advice tags. So if it's clearly labeled and identified, that they would work really hard to utilize that. And then 41% said that they would use recycling promotional materials. You can see the other responses. We can hit the next slide, please. So, you know, in order to make change, not only do we have to know what we want to change, but we have to believe that we can do it, right? That sense of agency really matters. And so we asked folks as they were responding, do you feel that you can make an impact on climate change? And so if you combine the people who are a definite yes and they're like, yeah, I feel somewhat confident, that was 83% of people who responded really felt like they could make a difference. So I think what that tells us, this is the last slide, is that we are in a context where the city of Albuquerque is really mobilized around this issue, and there are going to be a lot of allies in terms of implementation if we consider kind of your perspectives and their perspectives well in the design of the plan. And so with that, we can go ahead and stop sharing and go back to where we see the full gallery, please. And also, Javi, if we can just go back to a regular, if you can remove the spotlight, that would be awesome. So we're going to shift into conversation, and I just want folks to think for a minute, you know, as you're thinking about what you heard about each other, and as you think about the issues that are nearest and dearest to you that brought you to this table, are there key values that you want folks to kind of understand in terms of where you're coming from and what's important to you? And if we can just ask you to kind of just name those key values and those key themes. So it could be things that, you know, resonate with what you were hearing from other folks around Albuquerque. It could be things that resonated with other members of the task force, or it could just be things that are like where you're coming from. And so we're gonna take the bottom of the alphabet up, and you can always, again, pass or skip, and we can come back to you if you want. Erika, how about for you? Any key values you just want to put on the table so other folks understand?
You know, it's all important to me, but I do like the equity coming from beginnings of, you know, I grew up, my mom had food stamps, I had a single mom, and I did a bit of that when I was in college as a single mom with my girls as well. And so being able to, you know, have that availability that all can not only partake, but also benefit from it. Sorry, my dog. Benefit from it as well.
Thank you. Tara.
I mean, I think everybody and what you guys just shared, it's all really interesting, and I'm excited to hear everybody's different perspectives. One thing that I neglected to mention is both my parents grew up on apple orchards, one in the North Valley, one in the South Valley. And so the idea of this supporting local agriculture and sustainable agriculture, that is something that I think is really interesting to me, because it also, speaking to equity, is something that I have a friend who works with Food is Free Albuquerque. So the idea of urban gardens and ways of supporting our friends and neighbors to meet all of their needs in a fair and just way. So beyond the energy thing, which is of course my passion, and that led me into my professional career, I think that that's one thing that I'd like to touch on definitely. And also sort of the idea of a sharing economy. Not every one of us needs to have everything if we can share. So that's just a little bit more.
Thank you, Tara. Chaz, how about for you? What values do you want to lift up and put on the table?
It's good. Oh, I'm sorry. I think it's a common theme: equity, accessibility, making sure that this is, you know, how we move this forward is accessible for everyone. Just looking at the some of the demographics of the people who responded, you know, seeing a higher percentage of folks, you know, making more money, and then less representation, especially of people of color, in that, just making sure that when we're moving forward with creating, you know, or recommending policy, that it is equitable and accessible to everybody, and thinking about how we really work to get the responses from folks who aren't represented, and making sure that their priorities are heard and represented in this forum.
Thanks so much, Chaz. And that's part of where your relationships are so important, right? Like, you were very intentional in looking at folks who were relationship rich and who are able to stay in conversation. Like, there's the conversations we're having as a task force, but we hope that those are informed by your relationships and the work you do every day. So thank you for that. We're gonna go to Emily next. Emily, what values do you want to lift up?
I don't really know if I have anything that's specific. I'm just like excited to be part of this group because, you know, I do a lot of youth activism, so I'm around people that are like my age or younger, but I'm excited to be part of this because most, I would say, of the people in this group are older than me, which is like a really good opportunity to have like mentors and people that I can see like what I want to do when I'm older, and how everybody has been able to contribute with their, you know, different degrees and what they're doing with their jobs. So that's pretty much all I have to say about it.
Beautiful. Thanks, Emily. Virginia had to leave a little early. She apologized, but if you missed it in the chat, she said her greatest value is ensuring there is authentic accountability to equity, and especially around addressing environmental racism and how it's a major part of climate change and sustainability, and that she's glad to be a part. Let's go to Alex next. Alex, are there any of the values that you want to lift up?
Hard question, right? For somebody that took the survey, it was a really challenging survey to really prioritize those things, because I think everything on that list is important. Of course, varying degrees to varying people, but I think the thing that was encouraging from the survey results that I saw is, you know, we live in a place that's very beautiful and we have incredible weather, and I like that people are encouraging being outside more green space, more this, more that, and I think that will connect us with the environment and people will be lifted to take better care of it. That was great, and I'd love to see more of that because I think we're really missing that piece currently in our city. So,
Alex, it's that powerful reminder, right, that we are in healthy relationship with that which we hold sacred or valuable, right?
If we connect with it, we'll take better care of it.
Amen. Yep. Cassandra, how about for you? What values do you want to lift up?
Hi, I'm here, and I really agree with what everyone has said. I think what I am really hoping to highlight through this is finding ways to merge science and policy with action. I think a lot of what I see in my communities at UNM is a lot of passion for finding, you know, finding connections and what's happening in the landscapes, but there's a little opportunity to communicate that science to legislators and policymakers to really get action moving forward. So I'm hoping to bring that perspective and highlight that during my time on the task force.
Excellent. And having a climate action plan can really be a vehicle for people to have that kind of coordinated impact, right? So it's what makes each of your contributions so powerful. Let's go to Karen next. Karen?
Okay, thank you so much. First, I forgot to tell everyone I am a native New Mexican. I was born and raised here, so very proud to be a part of this team again. But I'd like to say that I think for me, you know, I lived many years as a single mom, also with a son who's on the spectrum, the autism spectrum. And that being said, I think for those two reasons alone, if we can focus, you know, on the ease of accessibility, because I think that an example I'll use in my own life, I couldn't afford solar on my house for many, many years, even though I really wanted it, until I met my partner and got married, and we could do that together. But there's many families out there that are in the boat that I was as being a single parent. It's going to be very hard with some, you know, you want programs to be accessible to everyone, not just, you know, not just a few people, but everyone. So from that standpoint, and then I just think from this being part of the New Mexico Autism Society and that part of a network in our community, you know, making things also accessible to special needs communities is a very important factor, I think, here. But just as everyone as a whole, I think if there's an ease of accessibility to the things we decide on or implement or come up with or programs, you know, I think the higher the success of those things will be.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karen. Let's go to Sharon. Sharon, any values you want to lift up?
Yeah, and actually, I appreciate what Karen just said, because I was gonna, one of the values I'd like to see in this plan is also reality, and sort of doing reality checks on what is actually feasible for the community. And, you know, there's a lot of great ideas that aren't affordable for a lot of people. And so doing that reality check is really a critical part of equity. I also would like to see place really prominent in this. And I appreciate that we're all distributed throughout the city. I wasn't necessarily expecting to refer to the fact that I'm on the Griegos Acequia, but as you were asking for our introductions, I was thinking about how important that is to my life in terms of the water and that space where I spend part of every day. So I think that, you know, we're all here so that we can interact with our communities, but I think we are also here to help represent them as places. So hopefully that will be apparent in the plan as well. Thank you.
Sure. So that we have solutions that work in a variety of neighborhoods, that we don't think of the city as some monolithic thing. Let's go to Solana next. Solana, any values you want to hold up?
Hi, I'm not quite too sure what to pin values, and not yet, but I definitely will. But I do operate personally with the values of empathy and gratitude, and I'm taking every moment in, and listening with empathy and like open mind and heart. So yeah. But yeah, I'll definitely think more on that as we go along. So thank you.
Thank you, Solana. Elga?
Well, I think my values are rooted in my native spirituality. And I always feel comfortable within the realms of intergenerational organizing. And I think one of the values that I would like to also uphold are the HEMIS principles of environmental justice organizing. Those are very important history as far as working on environmental justice issues here in the state of New Mexico. So for me, I'm a water protector, was in Standing Rock for 1.5 years with my family. So I know what a commitment to make change in environment is. And I bring the voice of those that have not had some of the opportunities that many of you have had. Simple little things like higher education. That within itself places you all already on another level. And it's been noted here as you all say it. Present yourselves. But I'm also here to speak for all of those that haven't had that opportunity to be at a table to discuss these pieces with you. I myself hold no degree whatsoever other than the lived experience. But that lived experience has taught me many lessons on environmental racism, on the fact of a bottom-up approach versus a top-down approach, and being excluded for years from being able to participate at this level. As Lily said, I left some things out in my introduction. I am the president of the New Mexico Food and Agricultural Policy Council. I'm the president of the South Valley Main Street Board, and I'm also a Robert Wood Johnson Culture of Health leader and a Castanea Fellow. So it's been my lived experience to participate at this level and make serious structural change. And we've done it. What I've learned is that we can't do it alone. It takes all of us collaboratively doing it together, navigating it. But I come with the navigation of that bottom-up approach and with that lived experience.
Thank you so much, Elgar. I'm gonna go to Josue next.
The values that I would like to uplift will be equity and justice. More specifically, right, to talk more about how do we keep the elite polluters and corporations that have led ecological destruction in our communities just for the greed for profit? How do we keep those people accountable? Intersectionality with other of our other identities, right? That climate justice is not just by itself. That real climate justice should include racial justice, immigration justice in its core values. Also making sure that, you know, any climate action benefits our communities, that the new renewable clean energy is not owned by other corporations and companies outside of New Mexico, but that is owned by our communities. Public ownership of the grid, public ownership of who gets to control and decide what type of energy we get, especially for communities of color. Also, how do we have a more deep conversation about individual actions around climate versus policy actions, right? How does it benefit my community to recycle while New Mexico opens its doors for more fracking? How do we counterbalance that whole narrative that climate crisis is on our shoulders instead of really addressing who is driving the climate crisis, which is corporations and corporate greed that have also justified other struggles like colonization and oppression that our communities have lived for so many years here in New Mexico. And with it too, also have deeper conversations about real and true deep climate action is not just about creating greener spaces. Because for example, like myself that grew up in the international zone, what will it help me to have a new park? Meanwhile, my whole community is patrolled by cops. And as a person of color, how can I keep myself safe and feel like I have a clean environment while cops are always looking at our communities and being targeted? And have a deeper conversation, right, about what climate justice should be in a way that we prioritize public ownership and racial justice and immigration justice for, not just for Albuquerque, but for the state of New Mexico.
Thank you, Josue. And we've got Amy, Teresa, Marcus, Molly, Kevin, and Genesis next. We want to leave a little bit of time for some folks who have joined for public comment. Yeah, Amy, do you want to say what values you want to uphold?
Sure. I'm just feeling such an amount of resonance with Josue, with your focus on predatory corporate interests being something that has just besieged New Mexico forever, and it's getting more intense and more intense. And we really have to say, you know, no more, let's have some accountability here and make sure that that's followed through on. But I also, with Elga, feel so strongly about the intergenerational values that we need to propose. And I will guarantee that as the oldest person in the room here, that's really important to me, but it's also important that, speaking to Emily, that this reaching across this age barrier has never been more important. It's just absolutely exceptionally important. As a mother of a single mother of 2 children, I had my heat turned off. I know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to not get my degrees until I was in my 50s. So those are struggles that we all share, and we can use that as a springboard, hopefully, toward community education, bringing the schools into the center of our families and being more and more involved that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Teresa?
Okay, so I'm overwhelmed with all of these incredible values, and I uphold them all. I embrace them all. I don't know what else I could add to this other than I really want to see the word regenerative used in a way that could help our agriculture in particular, really to help deal with our water shortage and everything that we talk about. Water has to be somewhere in our thinking. I want to see holistic policies embracing all of these values that we're talking about. With regard to equity, we really need to make visible in the plan all of the hidden inequities that nobody sees. The public doesn't see it, policymakers don't see it, and that the plan has to integrate that and make it very visible. Water in particular is a very hard one to evaluate when it comes to inequity. But anyway, I thank you all for your beautiful presence and these values that you hold.
Thank you, Teresa. Marcus, how about for you? What values do you want to make sure to uplift?
Thank you. Just want to say there's been a lot of great ideas, a lot of values put forth by everyone here so far. So much so that like a lot of things I was thinking of, people had already said. So I was trying to think of something unique. So I'm coming from more of an economic perspective. We all want to be green. We all want to have more solar, wind, etc. But we have to make sure, and we can build into the plan a way to hold companies and corporations accountable that sell these products. The state of New Mexico recently had a judgment against a solar panel company that had predatory consumer practices. If we're going to go green, we're going to push this way. We have to make sure that the things that we're instituting for the public, going to go solar, wind, etc. We have to make sure the companies that are selling these products are doing it in the right way, and they're not going to rip people off, as some companies have already done. But other than that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. Molly, any values you want to uplift?
Thanks again for having me. And I really liked a couple of things that you all said. I think Virginia said accountability. I think Sharon said reality. I think those are really great values because without those, we are never going to reach justice. We're never going to reach equity. And they're really trendy words to include in plans. But if we don't consider people first, and I think what we are really subjecting them to possibly through our plans without even realizing it, we're just going to further the oppression of these most marginalized communities. And in my work at CNM, if I vet a lot of projects coming through, and I always say people first. And if in any way an environmental project would subject anyone at CNM, any one of the populations at CNM that work at CNM to a more oppressive situation, for example, if somebody said would require the custodians to empty more recycling bins, around campus or whatever, that's a hypothetical, whatever the case may be, I would probably say no to that project. because the long-term impacts of that are not actually going to benefit the people, but rather further the situation that might be a little bit negative that they're already in. So my value, I guess, would be people, and I also really liked accountability and reality to make sure that we can actually realize the justice and equity that we're striving for.
Thanks, Molly. Daniel.
Okay, got the unmute button figured out, I think. Can you hear me okay?
Gotcha.
Okay, good. I think, you know, a lot of these resonate with me. The one value that I would say is quality of life. And I could probably connect that to anyone that's been mentioned, but that, and I'm thinking more from an economic development background. So again, I think I'll just leave it there, but I think that would kind of sum up what I'm hearing and what resonates from kind of my vantage point.
Thank you, Daniel.
So thanks.
Kevin.
I'd like to note that the survey results, if you guys go back and look at those, skewed towards people with money, older people, and white folks. And I think it'd be an interesting exercise to see how those answers play out if the underrepresented people in that survey were given extra weight, or just to see how that might change the survey results. I don't know if that's possible or not, but you know, we see it right there. You know, people who have time, people who have money, people who have interest, who have the, you know, they're the ones that by and large participate. One of the things I'm guided by now, and I recommend it to everybody, is Pope Francis's 2015 church teaching titled Laudato Si, on care for our common home. A lot of people call it an environmental document. It's not. It's a social document. And the climate change is a symptom. It's not the root problem. It's really important to keep in mind what the root problems are. And a lot of you have, I think, have insight into what those problems are, as does Pope Francis. It's a really remarkable document. You know, we're, another little interesting exercise might just be to quickly calculate the greenhouse gas emissions avoided today by participating electronically through this forum instead of all of us having to drive across town to a central location. This is the kind of thing that needs to keep happening post-pandemic. You know, we need to get, if we're really going to put the fossil fuel era behind us, which we absolutely have to do, this is going to be how we're going to do it, one of the ways we have to do it. Electric vehicles are not going to be the solution for everybody. E-bikes might be. Scooters might be. Certainly better public transportation, but, you know, that's going to be post-pandemic. Who wants to ride the bus now?
Right.
You know, it's a scary situation. But this is really a wonderful effort. You know, I'm hoping that I hope we'll see some media attention to this very soon.
Yes, Kevin,
I'm concerned.
Kevin, I'm sorry, we're going to move just because we're at time, but know that media absolutely
Very good.
talk more. Thank you. Genesis, we want to give you time as well. When you think about the values you want to uphold, what comes to mind for you?
Well, first of all, I completely agree with all those that came before me. I'm originally from Nogales, Arizona, which is a small border town community that's primarily low income, 98% Latino, Hispanic. And For me, one of the biggest things is education and awareness and representation of those most marginalized in society, which are those that are low income, people of color, and as Karen had mentioned too, those with disabilities. I'm a pediatric speech language pathologist, and I've seen how climate change is directly impacting health in our children, in women, and for all of us. So for this education and awareness to come forth that it impacts all of us, and to combat misinformation on the idea of climate change being something political, which is something that I've seen since I've moved here, specifically going on the media all the time, with it being a socialist agenda to be going toward making solutions toward climate change. So thank you.
Thanks, Genesis. It's important, right? The way we tell our stories, the messaging around it, who sets the narrative really matters. And so I appreciate you all just naming your values and putting them on the table, right? So we have a couple of folks, and I know we're a few minutes over, but they've been hanging in there with us, who joined for public comment. And can you all give folks just a few minutes they'll have just a minute each to speak, to kind of share their thoughts. Thank you for that. So we have Natalie Duncan. Natalie, are you on? Would you like to comment?
I wasn't prepared for this, but I'm
You
just
don't have
listening
to,
in.
but you have the opportunity to if you'd like to speak for a minute.
No, just in awe of wonderful representation here and so excited to see what happens. But thank you all.
And thank you, Natalie, for caring enough to spend the time to come and to listen in this way. We also have somebody who's identified themselves not by name, but by organization. If you're with the Wilderness Society and you've been listening in and you'd like to comment, we'd love to give you that opportunity.
Actually, I think they just left the call.
Oh, well, I guess they're like, uh-oh, Natalie got called on, I'm out. So these things happen. So we'll be giving about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of sessions usually, but I really wanted to prioritize your time and opportunity to check in and put those values on the table and know what agendas people are bringing, right? It's helpful to know and to see where there's resonance, but where there's also, differences in perspective, because that's really valuable too. So a couple of reminders. We're going to get the notes out to you in a few days. If you mentioned a resource when you were talking about your values and you have access to that electronically, we can pop the link in there as well, so that way we don't miss the good ideas and resources you were sharing with one another. As we go along, if there are resources you want to share, we're going to be taking public comment, but also if we get emails from you that are not about logistics but are of a substantive nature, we'll put those in a log. So that way you see the communication. There's no back channeling or side channeling. There's nothing being decided without all of us, right? So we'll keep that log for you all to be able to access, and we'll send it out on a weekly basis, so you see what information's coming in, both from the general public as well as from other members. We also have some homework for folks. And so, and what we'd like you to do is take a moment. We have a few questions that are laid out for you in a Survey Monkey, and we'll include those in the notes as well. But Javi or Erica, do you mind popping in the list so folks kind of see it, recognize it? But you'll be getting that for us. If you're busy, and we know that we're all busy people, that's understandable. We're going to give reminders not to drive you up the wall, but to, help you keep it on your radar, because I know folks are juggling a lot of things. But if you're not able to do the homework, know that we really value it. It really is going to inform how we're pulling together drafts and how we're setting agendas. But if you don't, we still want you, right? Like, so don't feel like, oh man, I didn't do it and this and that. And, they're keeping a naughty and nice list. Not at all. You're all good people. We're all doing the best we can. And so if you can weigh in, please take the time to do that. We'll also be including opportunities for reading. And so the interns that work for the city of Albuquerque will be putting together one-pagers. Not that any of these issues are as simple as one page, but with references out to other resources that might be useful. And if you'd like to contribute in that way to any of the topics, please, by all means, feel free to share. I think part of the power of having such a heavy hitting group of folks is that you know a lot and you bring a lot of perspectives. And again, while there may be overlap, there may be things that other folks haven't had an opportunity to look more closely at. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for the extra 6 minutes. We'll see you soon. And if you need anything in the meantime, if there's something that you missed or a reference, and you're like, God, I missed that in the chat, by all means, you can feel free to reach out to Javier or Erica. They're going to be faster. You can reach out to me, but I often have hundreds of emails and I'm not the fastest one. But if I can be helpful, they'll cue me in if it's something I need to help with. So thank you all so much. Take care of yourselves and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone. Have a good evening.
Good night.